private royal breach has reportedly sent shockwaves through palace walls. Leaked emails, allegedly written by Queen Camilla about Princess Kate, have exposed raw emotions, quiet insecurities, and subtle power tensions insiders say were never meant to surface. Staff claim this isn't just a leak. It could mark a turning point for the monarchy itself. Section 1. The leak that shocked palace staff. According to multiple insider accounts, the situation began unfolding quietly on a Thursday afternoon, when a digital file containing what appeared to be private emails started circulating among senior palace staff. The messages were reportedly linked to Queen Camilla's personal device and originated from a non-official email address, used for private correspondence rather than formal royal communication. Within minutes, the file began moving through multiple internal departments. What initially seemed like a minor technical mishap quickly escalated into something far more serious. Several aides reportedly realized the content was not intended for official circulation, prompting an urgent internal response. Meetings were postponed, phone usage was restricted, and senior staff were instructed to avoid discussing the matter outside control channels. Insiders claimed the emotional tone of the emails was what unsettled staff the most. Rather than formal statements or administrative notes, the messages were described as personal, reflective, and unexpectedly candid, with much of the content allegedly focused on Princess Kate. One longtime staff member reportedly reacted with disbelief, suggesting that if the emails were genuine, they could reshape how internal royal dynamics are understood. Within hours, an emergency briefing was called behind closed doors. Devices were allegedly reviewed, access logs were examined, and conversations were kept intentionally brief. While the emails had not been released publicly, insiders claimed the internal impact was immediate. Tension reportedly spread through palace corridors as staff attempted to determine not only what had been exposed, but how it could affect internal trust. Some aides allegedly compared the seriousness of the situation to past royal controversies, though they emphasized this felt different. Previous royal media storms often came from external interviews, memoirs, or press reports. This time, insiders claimed the breach came from within, revealing private sentiments rather than public narratives. That distinction reportedly heightened concern. The issue wasn't just reputational, it was emotional and institutional. Several staff members allegedly described a sense of shock that personal reflections tied to the royal household could circulate so easily, even within internal networks. For some, it raised deeper questions about digital security, privacy, and how much personal communication should exist within a highly structured institution. Behind the scenes, aides were reportedly divided between those urging caution and those calling for immediate damage control. Some feared the situation could escalate into a broader conversation about hierarchy, influence, and internal loyalty. Others reportedly hoped the issue could be contained before it reached public awareness. What intensified the reaction, insiders say, was the realization that the emails weren't written casually or impulsively. They allegedly spanned several months and touched on sensitive moments in the royal calendar, suggesting they reflected ongoing personal thoughts rather than a single emotional outburst. That detail reportedly made the situation feel less like a technical slip and more like a revealing window into internal sentiment. By evening, the palace atmosphere was described as unusually quiet. Conversations shifted to hushed tones. Staff reportedly avoided speculation in shared spaces, while leadership worked to assess next steps. Some insiders claim legal teams were notified early, while IT departments began reviewing device access and data synchronization histories. Yet, amid the confusion, one question reportedly lingered among staff. What exactly did these emails say that caused such a strong reaction? Because while the leak itself was alarming, insiders suggest the true shock came from the tone, the implications, and the personal dynamics hinted at within the messages. And according to those familiar with the content, what the emails allegedly revealed about Princess Kate and Queen Camilla's private feelings toward her is what truly turned this from a technical breach into a potential shift in royal power perception, and the revelations only grew more sensitive from there. Section 2. What the emails allegedly revealed about Kate. As palace staff continued reviewing the leaked messages, insiders say the real shock wasn't just that private emails had surfaced. It was what those emails reportedly revealed about Princess Kate. According to people familiar with the content, Queen Camilla's messages carried a tone that felt emotionally vulnerable, introspective, and quietly revealing, rather than openly hostile or aggressive. Several emails allegedly expressed Camilla's growing awareness of Kate's rising public influence. Rather than attacking her directly, the tone was described as conflicted, a mix of admiration, insecurity, and concern. One message reportedly reflected on Kate's effortless ability to command public attention, suggesting that her presence carried a kind of natural authority that resonated deeply with audiences. Insiders claim Camilla noted how Kate's grace appeared to feel both genuine and powerful, not forced or overly performative. In one widely discussed line, Camilla allegedly remarked that Kate seemed to wear composure like a cloak, subtle, controlled, and effective. Staff reportedly interpreted this not as criticism, but as an admission of quiet unease over Kate's expanding role within the public eye. Other emails allegedly referenced Kate's influence with foreign dignitaries, her impact on fashion and cultural messaging, and her growing image as a reassuring national figure. Some insiders believe Camilla privately recognized that Kate was becoming a central emotional anchor for the public, a position once strongly associated with Princess Diana. While no email explicitly named Diana in a confrontational way, staff interpret certain remarks as indirect comparisons, heightening the emotional weight of the situation. What unsettled aides most, according to reports, was that the emails didn't read like calculated political messaging. They felt personal, human, reflective. Instead of sounding like strategic attacks, the messages appear to reveal internal doubt, the quiet fear being overshadowed in an evolving royal landscape. Yet there was also a more complicated layer. Some emails were reportedly copied to individuals with influence in royal advisory circles, including social and administrative figures. This detail led certain staff members to wonder whether some of these thoughts were truly private, or whether they subtly shaped behind-the-scenes opinion about Kate's growing prominence. That's where the tension intensified. While the tone of the messages was described as emotional rather than malicious, aides reportedly felt the implications could still carry political weight. It wasn't just about feelings. It hinted at influence, narrative control, and how internal power dynamics might be quietly shifting. One insider described the emails as dangerous not because they were cruel, but because they were honest. In their view, emotional transparency inside an institution built on restraint can become destabilizing, especially when it touches on hierarchy, visibility, and succession optics. There was also concern about timing. The emails allegedly spanned several months and coincided with key moments in Kate's public resurgence, including major appearances following her recent health recovery period. To some staff members, this suggested Camilla's reflections were part of an ongoing internal adjustment to Kate's expanding role, not a one-time emotional reaction. At the same time, aides reportedly emphasized that the emails did not contain threats, insults, or overt hostility. Instead, they reflected a quiet internal struggle, how to exist gracefully in an institution where public attention naturally shifts over time. That nuance is what made the situation feel so complicated. Staff weren't reacting to a scandal fueled by aggression. They were reacting to a window into personal insecurity, emotional vulnerability, and subtle institutional competition. For many inside the palace, the realization was sobering. If such deeply personal thoughts could surface so easily, what did that mean for trust, privacy, and internal communication going forward? And perhaps more importantly, aides began to recognize that the emails weren't just about emotion. They hinted at a deeper tension over power, perception, and influence within the monarchy. Because beyond the personal tone, insiders say the messages raise a larger, more unsettling question. Was this simply about feelings? Or was it quietly revealing a shift in who truly holds influence behind the crown? Section 3. Why this wasn't just gossip. Power, perception, and a quiet shift. As more palace insiders reflected on the leaked emails, a new realization reportedly began to settle in. This situation wasn't just about personal feelings. It was about power, influence, and how public perception quietly shapes authority inside the monarchy. According to staff familiar with the messages, the emails weren't casual or impulsive. They were reportedly written over an extended period, spanning nearly a year, and sent during key royal moments, including major public tours, high-profile events, and private family gatherings. That detail alone made some aides view the situation as more than emotional venting. To them, it suggested a long-running internal awareness of shifting dynamics. Several lines allegedly referenced concerns about optics, who stood at the forefront, who commanded attention, and who shaped the emotional tone of the monarchy. One message reportedly reflected frustration over perceived imbalance in visibility, hinting that certain figures appear to receive more public focus than others. Another allegedly suggested that Kate's team had become highly effective at positioning her as a leading presence in national sentiment. Insiders say this raised eyebrows, not because the comments were aggressive, but because they implied a quiet strategic awareness, an acknowledgement that public affection translates into influence. Within royal circles, attention is more than admiration. It shapes relevance, credibility, and long-term legacy. One advisor reportedly summarized the issue this way: titles may define rank, but public attachment defines power. In that sense, the emails were interpreted as an indirect admission that Kate's role in the monarchy was expanding beyond traditional expectations. To some staff members, this felt like confirmation of something they had already sensed. Kate's visibility, especially following recent public engagements and her health-related return to duties, had grown steadily. Her calm presence, consistency, and emotional relatability were seen as strengthening her standing, not through controversy, but through quiet reliability. What made the emails particularly striking, insiders say, was that they didn't challenge Kate's character. Instead, they acknowledged her effectiveness. That acknowledgement, even when framed as concern or insecurity, suggested an internal recognition that the center of public emotional gravity might be shifting. This is where aides reportedly began reframing the leak. It wasn't about rivalry in a dramatic sense. It was about an institution confronting change, generational, cultural, and symbolic. The monarchy, long guided by tradition and protocol, was now facing a reality shaped by audience perception, digital narratives, and emotional connection. Some staff reportedly interpreted the emails as a subtle sign of tension between established hierarchy and emerging influence. Others saw them as a natural human reaction to evolving roles. But either way, the message was clear. The monarchy's internal balance is no longer shaped only by titles. It's shaped by attention, relevance, and public trust. There was also concern about what this meant for internal cohesion. If private thoughts about influence and hierarchy could circulate, what else might surface in the future? The emails reportedly forced palace staff to confront an uncomfortable truth: that emotional undercurrents inside the institution may be more complex than the polished public image suggests. For many aides, this reframed the entire situation. The leak wasn't dangerous because it embarrassed anyone. It was dangerous because it revealed a candid look at how power is felt, negotiated, and quietly contested behind closed doors. And that realization reportedly sparked a deeper anxiety. If influence within the monarchy is shifting, and if those shifts are now visible, then the biggest question isn't what was written, it's how this shift will be managed moving forward. Because the staff began to process the implications, attention turned to a new mystery altogether. Not what the emails meant, but how they ever surfaced in the first place, and whether the leak was truly accidental or something far more calculated. Section 4. How the leak happened: accident, insider move, or silent power play. As palace leadership worked to contain the fallout, attention reportedly shifted to one urgent question: how did these private emails leak in the first place? According to insiders, the answer is still unclear, and the uncertainty itself has fueled suspicion, paranoia, and quiet internal tension. Multiple theories reportedly began circulating among staff. One explanation suggests a technical mishap involving a sync device. An iPad or secondary laptop linked to Queen Camilla's private email account may have been misplaced during travel, possibly allowing unintended access. Others point to a file synchronization error between personal and shared assistance devices, a digital slip that could have exposed months of stored correspondence. But not everyone believes it was accidental. Some insiders reportedly suspect the leak could have been intentional, a strategic move by someone with internal access and an interest in shifting power dynamics. Rumors began to swirl about internal factions, with speculation of an ongoing divide between more traditional royal loyalists and a newer generation aligned with Kensington Palace's evolving influence. In that view, the leak may not have been about embarrassment, but leverage. Others floated the possibility that an outside contact, perhaps a journalist or intermediary, was mistakenly copied on an email chain. While no outlet has publicly released the emails, insiders claim legal teams issued rapid warnings and protective notices within hours of the breach. That swift legal response reportedly prevented public dissemination, but it did little to calm internal nerves. Inside royal residences, technical audits were said to be launched almost immediately. IT teams across multiple estates reportedly began reviewing device logs, access histories, and email backups. Personal devices were checked. Some were temporarily confiscated. Staff members were quietly questioned about access permissions, file transfers, and recent communication patterns. One IT officer allegedly warned that if this breach was possible, other sensitive data might also be vulnerable. That suggestion reportedly deepened concern, not only about this incident, but about what else could exist on unsecured systems. The atmosphere inside the palace was described as increasingly tense. Conversations moved away from open offices into small private rooms. Staff reportedly avoided discussing sensitive topics near electronic devices. Meetings were held in smaller groups, and certain discussions shifted to handwritten notes or in-person briefings to reduce digital risk. For some aides, the technical mystery felt almost secondary to the emotional impact. The idea that private thoughts could surface, whether by mistake or design, shook confidence in internal trust. If the leak was accidental, it revealed fragility in royal digital security. If intentional, it suggested deeper fractures in loyalty and institutional unity. Both possibilities were troubling. Insiders claimed that suspicions began forming quietly around who might benefit from the exposure. Some believed it strengthened Kate's public image by contrast. Others thought it weakened Camilla's, standing at a sensitive moment. Still others argued it could have been meant to trigger broader reform, forcing the monarchy to modernize communication systems and transparency practices. But no official explanation has been offered, and according to reports, none is expected. That silence has only deepened speculation. Within staff circles, the breach became more than a technical incident. It became a symbol of something larger, a sign that the palace, long known for discipline and control, may be entering an era where privacy is harder to protect and internal emotions are harder to contain. What unsettled aides most, insiders say, wasn't just the breach itself. It was a growing realization that trust, once fractured, might not easily return. If personal thoughts can be exposed, and if motives remain unclear, then loyalty becomes uncertain and caution becomes a new norm. And while investigators focus on devices, logs, and access points, another consequence was quietly unfolding. Because regardless of how the leak happened, the emotional and political impact was already reshaping relationships inside the palace. As suspicion spread and silence grew, staff began to notice something else. The fallout wasn't weakening Princess Kate. It was strengthening her. And while Camilla faced scrutiny, Kate's position appeared to rise through calm restraint and public support, setting the stage for a deeper internal divide and a shift that few inside the palace felt prepared for. Section 5. Fallout inside the palace. Kate rises while trust collapses. As the internal fallout continued, palace insiders say the most surprising consequence of the leak wasn't public outrage. It was how the balance of perception inside the monarchy quietly shifted. While Queen Camilla faced emotional and reputational strain behind closed doors, Princess Kate's position appeared to strengthen without her saying a single word. According to staff familiar with internal reactions, Kate's team chose a strategy of silence. No counterstatements, no emotional responses, no public commentary. Instead, she reportedly remained focused on her duties, public engagements, and family priorities, a move that many royal observers interpreted as controlled, dignified, and highly effective. Behind the scenes, her supporters emphasized consistency. Longtime allies reportedly framed Kate as steady, dependable, and emotionally grounded, the kind of presence that reassures both the public and institutional figures. One former aide was quoted as saying that Kate doesn't need to defend herself because her behavior already does the talking. This restraint appeared to work in her favor. Public opinion metrics reportedly reflected rising approval, especially among younger audiences who view her as modern, relatable, and composed under pressure. Some insiders claim the leak unintentionally reinforced an image Kate had been building for years: calm leadership without controversy. Meanwhile, inside palace walls, emotional divisions reportedly deepened. Staff were said to split into quiet camps, some sympathetic toward Camilla's vulnerability, framing the emails as personal reflections never meant to be exposed. Others viewed the situation as evidence of behind-the-scenes positioning, interpreting the messages as an attempt, intentional or not, to influence perception about Kate's expanding role. Meetings reportedly became more discreet. Conversations moved into smaller rooms. Sensitive topics were discussed away from devices. Joint public appearances between Camilla and Kate were quietly adjusted or postponed, fueling speculation of internal strain. At the same time, senior aides to King Charles were said to focus on damage control, not only protecting public image, but preventing deeper erosion of internal unity. The concern wasn't just embarrassment, it was stability. Insiders suggest this incident forced a difficult acknowledgement. The monarchy is no longer shaped solely by tradition or hierarchy. It is increasingly shaped by public emotion, relatability, and perceived authenticity. And in that environment, Kate's calm, consistent presence appears to carry growing influence. One palace staffer reportedly summed it up bluntly: there may be a throne, but there's also the power to command hearts. That realization unsettled many within the institution, because while titles determine rank, public trust increasingly determines relevance. And the emails, intentionally or not, seem to confirm that Kate's role in the monarchy may be evolving into something more central than ever before. For some insiders, this moment felt like a quiet turning point, not a dramatic collapse, but a subtle shift, one where the emotional center of the monarchy continues to move toward a new generation. And as palace operations returned to outward normalcy, an undercurrent of uncertainty remained. Trust had been shaken, privacy felt fragile, and relationships that once relied on discretion now felt more guarded. What began as a private breach had become something far more symbolic, a glimpse into the emotional fault lines of a modern monarchy struggling to adapt to change. And as insiders reflected on the aftermath, a single question reportedly lingered in private conversations. Was this the moment the monarchy quietly began to transform, or had that transformation already been underway long before anyone noticed? This wasn't just a leak. It was a rare look behind royal protocol, into private emotion, shifting influence, and a monarchy confronting change in real time. Camilla's words may fade, but the questions they raise about power, trust, and succession will linger far longer. If you want more deep, behind-the-scenes stories about royal power, hidden tensions, and the moments the public was never meant to see, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because the next revelation might change how you see the monarchy forever.